Hello and welcome to Reddit Rundown, one of the very few Reddit channels actually voiced by a human. Click that subscribe button now, along with the bell icon if you'd like to get notified of new content. For today's video, in honor of the Marine Corps birthday and Veterans Day, this video is a compilation of funny stories from Bootcamp, the fleet, and deployments. Thank you to all service members, current and former. So I went to boot camp back in 2003. We had this recruit who was so freaking ugly. The drill instructors made him yell, "Hey you guys!" like the sloth character from the Goonies. They even called him Sloth. Then this one time everyone was in line in front of their bunks standing at attention. He had to go pee and the drill instructors wouldn't let him go. So he started doing a pee-pee dance, pinching the tip of his penis. One of our drill instructors called a school circle and we had to sit, kneel, bend while this guy was rolling on the floor peeing himself. Oh my god, I'm laughing so hard as I write this. Another story was in third phase and we had this recruit that was writing a movie script. Somehow a drill instructor found it. He made this poor mother lover read it out loud while everyone got smoked. He had to change his voice for the different characters too. While I was getting smoked, I'm thinking, who the heck has time to write a goddamn script? Anyway, that's two quick stories. What are yours? Mail call. A guy gets a thick envelope the DIs make him open to show them. It's a birthday card and he opens it and shows the DIs, who immediately start laughing. Probably the only time I witnessed anyone other than the SDI laugh. A fleet marine had sent the guy a Teletubbies birthday card and had pasted penises and breasts from a porno mag on all the Teletubbies inside, and then wrote in to talk about the recruit's love of transsexuals. Good times. My last name is Williamson. My top bunkmate's name was Williams. He was going to be a reservist and worked at a Volkswagen repair shop around Oceanside. His boss was a former gunny though, and I remember him telling me that his boss warned him he would mess with him in third phase. So here we are, about a week or two from graduation, working shower hall duty. And just before we form up to march back to the barracks, Williams tells me he peed off some DI and was gonna get smoked and probably wouldn't be back in time for a mail call. We knew our platoon DIs were off and another platoon's DIs were gonna pass out mail, so they wouldn't have any idea if it was him or not. So I would accept the mail in his place. So there's the whole company of recruits sitting Indian style. And they call it my bunkmate's name. I get up, present myself to the DI and accept the package. And it was a package, not some 2-page letter you don't have to open. So I accept the package like you do, stand to their left and begin opening it as he continues calling out names. I ripped open the top of the package and began to pull it out. There was something that looked like a blonde wig. Continue to pull, and there was the dead eyes of a poorly made woman's prosthetic face. I keep pulling, and there in all its glory is this big, fake, puffy, sucking lips of a blow-up doll that looked like some sort of perversion of Daisy Duke, complete with a flannel scarf. I pulled it all the way out, and because the DI was still calling male names, he was paying zero attention to me. So I kinda held it up high so the recruits could see it. All three platoons sitting Indian style in front of us just couldn't keep composure, and everyone started giggling. Which pissed off the DI and alerted him to the fact that I was the source of whatever the problem was. So he turns to me and says, "What the heck is that?" in his best DI voice, to which I responded, "Sir, it's a blow-up doll, sir." He freaking loses his crap and responds, "What the frick did you just say?" I said, "Sir, it's a blow-up doll, sir." I swear to all the gods I thought he was going to have an aneurysm right then and there. But eventually he just did the whole blade hand to the deck and yelled, "Down, down, get the heck down." So as recruits do, I started doing push-ups and this mother lover places the package under me so that every time I came down, the doll's lips were in line with mine and I had to kiss it. About 20 or 30 reps in, Williams shows up and sees me getting smoked. Figures out what happened. Gets down next to me and starts doing push-ups. Begs me to get up and join everybody else sitting down. And I'm like, dude, I can't stop till he says so. Eventually, the DI becomes aware there are now 2 people doing push-ups. Williams explains it to him, and he tells me to sit down. But that night, all Firewatch assignments were cancelled. Williams is made to blow up the doll. They tied her arms and legs around him, and he sent Firewatch that night, marching back and forth with that thing all night, while reciting the general orders. Maybe the best experience of my career. Paris Island, 1996, 3rd Battalion Mike Company, Platoon 3152. Some freaking recruit, when asked by the senior DI if they had any issues, says we don't get a lot of time to eat in the chow hall. Senior just replies, "Oh, is that right? Very well then," and walks off. No one thinks anything of it. But that night is the senior's turn to stay overnight with us, and he takes us to evening chow. I was pretty short compared to the other recruits, so I was 3 or 4 rings from the back and rarely ever had enough time to finish my tray. But this night was the only night I ever had enough time to eat everything in my tray and still have time to read my knowledge book. We were all fat and happy, thinking, man, we should tell the senior about other issues and maybe we can get something else. But as soon as we get back to the barracks, the senior says we need to make sure we stay hydrated and tells us to go back and get a canteen right now. Pop 'em! We are already so full from chow that it took forever to drink a whole canteen. But finally we can all get it down. We hold the canteens over our heads to show they're empty. I can see the guys' faces across from me and they all look like they're gonna throw up. But if we go to bed now, we can make it. Then senior tells us, close them up, go get that second canteen right now. Every one of these 70 plus recruits' hearts broke when we heard him say that. The second canteen was even harder than the first. About halfway through the second canteen, some recruit pops and just throws the heck up all over the squad bay floor. Huge puddle of puke on the floor. A few seconds later, because of the smell, another guy vomits. Then another and another. Maybe 6 or 7 dudes hurl and the whole place smells like puke. But after a few minutes it stops. We are all like barely holding it in. And we think he's going to let us put our canteens back, but instead he says something like, that chow hall food smells good. He pulls out a freaking MRE spoon, walks over, scoops some puke off of the floor, and walks up to a recruit who's barely holding it in and says, I'm gonna have to try this chow hall food tonight, and acts like he's gonna eat the puke. He doesn't really eat it, but we thought he was going to, and that was enough for that kid he was in front of to make him puke. Maybe 2 more puke from that as well. By the time it was over, maybe 10 or 11 dudes puked total. The senior had them clean their puke up and we finally hit the rack. No one ever complained about anything like that ever again. Best 2 that come to mind. Guy gets a box that's duct taped a crap ton. Looks very sketchy and it had some weight to it. Naturally, DIs make him open it in front of us. I crap you not, at least 10 big black rubber dildos fall and bounce around on the floor. Kill Hat immediately puts his cover in his face, turns around to regain composure. Guy had to throw them all out, then get IT'd. Warden, if you're reading this, I'm sorry that happened to you, but it was so freaking funny. Our company was doing the O course. I had just gotten off the rope at the end. I'm hydrating and watching this guy from another platoon climb the rope. He gets to the top where you have to yell your platoon number and SDI and all that. This kid goes, Platoon 2021, Senior Stops. Slow and awkwardly slides down the rope with stiff legs. DIs are screaming at him. I'm watching him out of curiosity. This recruit crapped himself, sir! The kid literally crapped himself at the top of the rope while yelling. Fun times. Okay, we have a second post here. That first one is Bootcamp Stories. This one is Drill Sergeants of Reddit. What was the funniest thing a recruit said? Mid-80s in Marine Corps Bootcamp. Got a letter from Mom. She desperately wanted to send her number 1 son something. I mailed back, don't. Last guy who got something got bent while the instructor shared it and the rest of us watched. I'll give her this, she's clever. She sent me 107 Snickers bars, one for each of the 103 recruits and 4 for the DIs. But we picked up a 5th DI that week. They made me open this heavy butt package I got in front of them. That was the first time I'd heard them laugh. I got IT'd up front while all the recruits and DIs watched and slowly enjoyed their Snickers bars. I still hate Snickers bars. I'm a military nurse, and as part of our orientation, we had to give vaccines to the new recruits at MCRD. One of the recruits was probably 4 foot nothing. They had yellow handprints on the wall for the bicycling shot, and he couldn't even reach them. One of the DIs just kept yelling at him, "Defy all odds, recruit! Defy all odds!" My DI ordered me to tell another DI to go F himself. After a moment of confusion, I did. DI number 2 was super pissed and threatened me with all kinds of stuff, but I was never really worried since I figured the first one was just messing with us both and wouldn't let it get too far. Luckily, I was right. The other trainees nearby who overheard the exchange were convinced I was done, made me a minor celebrity afterwards. Rifle range week in the pits. 2 DIs walked towards each other. An echo of "Good morning, sir," as they walk past each recruit, until they converge on one. "Good morning, sir." "Sir? Punk, I know there's 2 of us." "Aye, sir." "Oh, so F me, right?" "No, sir." "Then F him?" "No, sir." "Well, it has to be one of us. So which is it, recruit? F me or F him?" 5, 4, 3. "F him, sir." Both DIs make no attempt to conceal it, start bursting into laughter. The one who made him say it stumbles away in tears. The DI who he said F him to collects himself and provides some IT training to the kid. One guy got selected to go to the Natick Human Research Center after basic, which is basically a place where they use soldiers in experiments to test new gear. So he gets his pamphlet or whatever from the DS, and as he's walking away he says, "Well, I didn't want robo-penis in my butt, but I guess I'm gonna get one." And the DS just lost it laughing. Had to close the door to his office. Someone replied, "They do use tethered anal thermometers there for measuring core body temp." He wasn't far off. Not a DS, but a Navy recruit. I was on colors duty and it's kind of windy in Chicago. One time we did not tie the fastening ropes well enough, so the flag ended up half-mast. Our RDC retrieves me and the other recruit from class an hour later and proceeds to yell at us, and then asks, "Who the F died?" The other recruit, without missing a beat, says, "Chris Farley." It was technically true because he had died a few days before. The RDC had to leave to compose himself, before proceeding to have us stand at attention for a few hours while all the other ship RDCs came by and made fun of us and yelled at us, making Farley and SNL jokes. I remember when I was in boot camp, we were in the squad bay cleaning our rifles. One recruit was in crutches, so he was just sitting down, basically watching us clean ours. DI walks over and asks what the heck he's doing. "This recruit doesn't have a rifle." "Well, no crap, start cleaning your crutch, recruit." "The crutch, sir?" "Yes, now clean it and say the crutch creed." The recruit starts to brush his crutch. "This is my crutch. There are many like it, but this one is mine. Without me, my crutch is useless. Without my crutch, I am useless." "What the heck? Shut the hell up, recruit." Drill instructor had to walk away and put his hat in front of his face, so we couldn't see him laugh. We all had a good laugh about it that night during square away time. There are plenty more stories that made us laugh once boot camp was over. In Navy boot camp, we have a thing before battle stations called Amnesty Night. This is where we confess all the dumb stuff we managed to get away with to our RDCs and not get in trouble. Our chief had a lisp, which we all talked crap about throughout boot camp, but never in front of him. We had a pretty short guy named Patterson that could do a perfect impression of him. Patterson proceeded to stand up in the middle of forward IG and said, What the F do I have to keep touching your dirty ass? You motherfucker for making me thick. The entire division was dying. RDCs were in tears about to fall out of their chairs. When everything quieted down, the chief of the stutter looked at us and said, I effing hate you guys, but that was fucking funny. The entire division proceeded to die again. Not necessarily what a recruit said, but had to do. Imagine this, 0500 physical training formation. Everyone is dressed in the proper uniform. Gray shirt, blue shorts, white socks, shiny new pair of New Balance dad shoes. Except for Recruit Idiot. Recruit Idiot realized he didn't have clean white socks while getting ready, and thought it would be okay to join formation in knee-high green socks. The following conversation transpired. Drill Sergeant. Trainee Idiot, what the hell do you have on? Ma'am, I didn't have clean white socks, so I used my uniform socks instead. Trainee Idiot, do you know what covert ops is? Yes, ma'am. Trainee Idiot, I want you to covert ops your butt over there to the barracks and acquire a pair of white socks from your laundry bag. Stares blankly. Low crawl your butt to the barracks and get the correct pair of socks on your dang feet. Trainee Idiot does what he's told and low crawls nearly a mile to the barracks. Nearly dies from exhaustion and humiliation. Sincerely, Trainee Idiot. I had a particularly troublesome private who, for a long complicated set of reasons involving, and this is key, lack of judgment, I had required to stand fire watch outside of a porta-john, immediately adjacent to the brigade CP I was running. I gave him a clipboard with an approved access list, and required him to log all authorized visitors in and out of the john, which was the only real facility anywhere for at least 10 kilometers. Basically the only one that's not a hole in the ground. He didn't much like his job, but that was kind of the point. Being the CP for the whole FTX, VIP visitors were to be expected. We had the brigade commander pull up and take the usual tour of CP. She looked at the master event list, checked where everybody was, called someone on the radio to make sure that it worked, but really just to call herself Sunray, etc. That done, she excused herself to take advantage of the only toilet in the AOO. She returned a surprisingly long while later, made a cryptic comment about the facilities, collected her sergeant major, and left. It was at that point I remembered I left a borderline idiot posted up outside of the crapper. When I asked him what happened, the following interaction occurred. The colonel wanted to use the john, Sergeant. Fine, I told him, but what took her so long? I refused her access, Sergeant. I was about to ask him why the apocryphal frick anybody do such a thing when I saw his white knuckles on the clipboard, and the answer became obvious. He had questionable judgment, and she hadn't been on the access list. Trying to keep my cool, I asked him what she thought about that. She was very nice, Sergeant. Said I was right to challenge her on that. Okay, I said. And then what? Then she told me to get the heck out of her way. She was going to take a poop in my hat, Sergeant. And did she poop in your hat, Private? I swear to God, I think I saw him start to check. It was lucky for us that she had a sense of humor about it. Maybe not so lucky for him. I asked the private the difference between cover and concealment. Private said, Drill Sergeant, you asked what seemed like a very important question, which I'm supposed to know the answer. However, this private was imagining not being called on and was not paying attention to the question. Drill Sergeant! Somebody replied, a better answer. Drill Sergeant, concealment is applied to the dark under eye circles and carefully blended with the ring finger to avoid pulling the delicate skin. Cover base is then applied over the entire face and blended with a damp sponge, paying particular attention to hairline and neck to avoid an obvious demarcation line. Drill Sergeant. One of my buddies has some amazing stories from DS time. My favorite was about a pair of trainees walking down the sidewalk toward an officer. The one trainee was carrying a large box with both hands, the other was walking to his right, empty-handed. The officer was getting ready to return the salute he knew was incoming, but the two trainees were visibly freaking out. How could A salute with both hands occupied? Trainee B got the bright idea to salute with his right hand, appropriately, and to also salute for his buddy with his left hand, and a resounding, "Good morning, sir!" This really needs a visual, but picture a Guinea Forest Usain Bolt arm position. The drill sergeants were falling over each other to go tear them apart, stifling laughter the whole time. We'll have this picture here, but this is almost like a dab hand position. He saluted himself and fully extended his left arm up to his friend's head to do his salute for him. Recruit fired all his blank ammo during ambush response training. He crawled in ditch to opposite where the aggressors were and started throwing rocks at them. DI came running in the middle of the road, blowing his whistle and screaming, "What the heck are you doing?" The recruit screamed back, "Throwing hand grenades, drill sergeant." Without missing a beat, the DI screamed, "Out freaking standing!" and walked away. Not a DS. Back in basic, there was a huge amount of importance of putting on ironing creases. This was back before the Navy switched from utilities to digis. Anyway, our RDC was a turbo hardbutt 9-year senior chief, Chief Fowlies. So we're all doing morning inspection, having ironed our clothes sometime during the night, when Chief sees some random recruit just walking through the hallway, looking like absolute crap. Chief called the recruit into our compartment and had him take part in our inspection. This recruit's uniform looked like it had been balled up and steamed. To this day, I still can't fathom how he managed to look so freaked out. So Chief looked at this kid and his messed up uniform and started laying into him with the usual. "You look like hammered dog crap. I've seen smoother nutsacks," etc. When Chief asks him, "Did you iron even a single article since you arrived?" And the recruit replied, "Chief, I ironed my skivvies, Chief." Keep in mind, we're all standing at parade rest as this was transpiring. That means you couldn't move or make a sound. So Chief, hearing this kid iron his skivvies underwear, made him dressed onto them and march around the compartment saying, "I ironed my skivvies, Chief." We almost freaking died laughing from holding in the laughter. There was another time during basic that was pretty good too. Chief Fowlies, like many RDCs, had a whole arsenal of insults at his disposal, but his favorite was definitely calling someone a bag of dicks. So this guy is running track, and he's struggling to keep a good pace. Chief starts motivating him with insults. I can't quite remember the earlier ones, but eventually, Chief calls this guy a wussy. That's when this recruit replied, "I'd prefer a bag of dicks, Chief." Basic was some of the most fun I've had in the military. Obligatory, not a drill sergeant. But I was U.S. infantry, serving in Korea. We were part of a mixed U.S.-Korea unit, and during a briefing, one of the Korean soldiers fell asleep. Our sergeant wakes him up and begins screaming at him. The soldier said, "No, Sergeant, you got it all wrong. In Korea, it's a sign of respect to listen with your eyes closed, because then you have no other distractions." The sergeant bought it, and as soon as the meeting was over and the sergeant was out of earshot, we all cracked up. Crying while doing push-ups. Gets asked, "Why are you crying?" They answered, "I'm not crying, sir, my eyes are sweating." I feel bad for the guy, but I gotta say it. His last name was Smelly, as in smelly. Couple replies on this one. We had a private seaman. Yep, he was often referred to as Sperm. In the Canadian military back in the day, our naval soldiers started off with the rank of ordinary seamen. That same class we had a Cox and the Cummings. So ordinary seaman Cox, ordinary seaman Cummings. We had a good time. Our DS called us a bunch of a-holes who were not team players. So we came up with a cadence that had us yelling, "Week to week, cheek to cheek, us a-holes stick together." The DS would try to hide his smiles when we pulled that one out. We had just finished our obstacle course, and we were lined up in the squad bay, getting ready to be hazed for sure. The guide was just fired, so he couldn't complete the course. Because he couldn't complete the course. Drill instructors were pissed. DI asked, "Who in here wants to be the guide?" Everyone's quiet. You can only hear the previous guide getting quarter-decked, and sounds of things slamming and other recruits yelling in other squad bays. Out of nowhere, this dude says, "I think the Rock should be the guide." Drill instructor snapped a turn and got right in his face, then asked him, "Who the F is the Rock?" At this point, I closed my eyes and just said under my breath, "Crap." I had no idea it would be so obvious, even at boot camp. People had always told me I looked like Dwayne Johnson. This guy proceeded to say my name, and the drill instructor got right in my face and asked me to do the eyebrow. Normally I would do it joking with friends and family, but this time it was in order. It felt different. I knew I couldn't laugh after. He had the hardest face while looking at me, and I proceeded to do it. His campaign cover snapped on so fast as soon as I did it, you could tell he was holding his laugh in, and a few recruits couldn't hold their curiosity and also smirked. I can tell as my eyes wandered for like half a second. He put his fingers up to my face without saying anything. His cover still down. Couldn't see his face. He walked away. Everyone was quiet. Nobody moving. A minute later, he comes back with the other two drill instructors and proceeds to ask me to do it again. All looking at me like they hate me. I did the eyebrow. They all smirked and tried so hard to not laugh. Proceeded to walk away toward their office as fast as they could. Once in there, you can hear their laughs again and again, and how the whole mood changed for everyone that day. We still got hazed and yelled at. I became the guide and the Rock in the same day. Good times. Planning a rucksack march, a private asked his section commander what he needed to pack. The sergeant said, "Pack everything on your kit list." As we were out on a 16-kilometer or 10-mile march, I took the private up and down. I note his ruck looks a little light. I whisper to my friend, his sergeant, this fact. At the next rest break, the sergeant goes over and picks up the private's rucksack. There appeared to be nothing in it. The sergeant goes to the private and after a few expletives asks him to empty out his ruck. The young private pulls out a piece of paper and says, "You told me to pack my kit list, Sergeant." It took every will in my being not to lose my crap at that moment. Needless to say, the young private had remedial ruck marches for the rest of the week. Afterwards, us section commanders had a great laugh at the audacity of the young lad. Man, I miss those days. Marching the troops back to the barracks after lunch, I noticed a recruit with a white stain on his hip pocket. I halted the platoon and got in the recruit's face. "Recruit, that white stain on your shirt better be because you're excited for this afternoon's training." "No, Sergeant, I'm saving my snack for later." "What snack are you saving?" "Ice cream." Obligatory not a DS. We were on grenade training range in groups of 3. This is where there are various stations where you and your group have to throw dummy grenades at things. When you're the one throwing, you're supposed to yell to your group, "Cover me while I throw my grenade." This one guy from the south with an accent to match yelled, "Cover me while I throw this here grenade," before he lobbed it. I had never seen the DS monitoring that station laugh so hard. In basic training, stood by our beds, inspection of platoon commander. In she comes, walks around, asks everyone questions. Guy next to me, who I'm still mates with now, got asked what he did before he joined. He answered, proud as lunch and for everyone to hear, "I sold condoms and nuts, man." Her and the corporals just started laughing. They couldn't help it. Convenience store clerk, I hope? Nope. Vending machines. Not a DS. We had a specific response that we all had to say if our TI or any other asked us a question in basic. They would say something, or if you had to go over to them, you had to say, "Trainee last name reports as ordered." When you got there, before you could answer. A lot of trainees screwed it up, and instead of saying "report as ordered," they would say "reporting." One day some new kid in another flight still in his civilian clothing, said he was reporting to his TI. When he got there, our TI stopped our flight so we could watch what happened. That guy stood there reporting the weather and telling the TI what shapes he saw in the clouds, because only freaking meteorologists do the reporting. I'll never forget watching some guy sit there and tell 52 other people what shapes he saw in the clouds at the top of his lungs. I have one as a former recruit. Air Force Basic Training, Fall 2002. One of the TIs for another flight in my squadron liked to tell his flight to do war cries, where they just scream. It was kinda dumb seeming to most of us, apparently including my TI. One afternoon we were in formation on the pads and the war cry flight was next to mine. I was an element lead, so first in line, in front of the TI. After the war cry, TI asked his flight to do their thing. I saw my two TIs lean in and exchange words and smirk. At that point, the lead TI looked at me and I kinda smirked at him too. Suddenly he shouted, "Trainee Rebbe War, come here!" I walked over. "Trainee Rebbe War reports, as ordered, sir." He leaned in and whispered, "Return to formation. When I ask you to give me a war cry, I want to hear the wimpiest, worst war cry you can manage." I smiled and nodded, returned to formation. "Trainee Rebbe War, let me hear your war cry!" he bellowed. He smiled and nodded and looked over at the TI who did the war cry, who just pursed his lips. No one else would have any idea what happened, but we didn't hear any war cries after that. I was not a drill instructor, but when I went through USMC Bootcamp in San Diego, we had a recruit that was a local and had a reputation of being a really funny guy. This recruit was very squared away and had near 300 PFT, and also shot expert at the range, so the DIs gave him some slack when he made a quick joke. By now it was a well-known platoon fact that he was from San Diego. At this point in time, we're on third phase of boot camp, so we're back in MCRD San Diego after the second phase at Camp Pendleton. We're going through a run of the confidence course, which is the iconic obstacle course with the rope slides, tall climbs, etc. Recruit W's climbing the Stairway to Heaven, which is a very tall ladder-like structure. When he reaches the top, he calls out to the drill instructor below. "Sir, Recruit W requests permission to speak to drill instructor Sergeant B, sir." The DI, Sergeant B, gives him permission to speak. "Sir, this recruit can see his house from here, sir." DI, Sergeant B, lost his composure and had to laugh out loud. The recruit had to do some extra push-ups and bend and thrust when he got off the obstacle. At basic, I got the whole DS team laughing from a comment. DS starts yelling at me in my face about God knows what, on and on. He's from the Deep South and has a super strong Mississippi accent. I am an immigrant from South Africa. My accent sounds English or Australian to most people in the US. I'd only been in the US for a few years and have been living in Oregon, and honestly, I can only understand a bit of what he's saying. At the end, he concludes with, "Do you understand the words coming out of my mouth, Private?" I replied, "Drill Sergeant, no, I'm really struggling with your accent, Drill Sergeant." There was silence for a bit, then they all started laughing. When I say down, you say we are. When I say up, you say weak-hearted. Down, we are. Up, retarded. I legit had to turn and walk away for a minute. When I went through Air Force Basic, we had a list of things we needed to have memorized and would regularly be quizzed on. The name and rank of every person in our chain of command, from us to the president, ranks, insignia, a bunch of Air Force trivia, etc. At the end of the chow hall line was the snake pit, the table where all the drill instructors sat, and they would randomly stop trainees and ask them these questions. As I was passing the table, I overheard one drill instructor brag to another that a girl in her flight had every single answer memorized well before most people usually do. That flight was behind me in the chow hall. As I sat down, they stopped that recruit, and one drill instructor started drilling her with these questions. She answers everyone perfectly and quickly. After 20 or so questions, the DI asks, Who lives in a pineapple under the sea? The recruit paused for a minute and said, "Excuse me, sir?" The DI yelled at the top of his lungs, "Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?" The poor girl is just frozen, and all the other DIs shout, "SpongeBob SquarePants!" They dismiss her, and the DI asking the questions continues to shout the next several lines of the song. I had a friend tell me this story. In the Marines, a chit is similar to a demerit. A Marine had something wrong with his uniform and was going to receive a chit. The drill sergeant gets in his face and yells, "Private! What is a four-letter word, starts with a C, ends with a T?" The private thinks for a minute and sounds off back. "Cunt, sir!" To which the drill sergeant replies back, holding his laughter back, "No, private, a chit." Not a DI, but when I was in boot camp, I was getting yelled at during chow by a DI. I didn't know what to do when I answered him because I was sitting, and you're not supposed to address him unless you're at attention. I didn't want to stand up and possibly be yelled at for being aggressive, so I just lifted my butt off the chair, leaned my back against the back of the chair, and stood at attention while sitting down still. The DI started to laugh and looked away. I stayed at attention. He turned and looked me in the eyes and asked if a ghost just tried to give me anal. Alright, quick note here. If you're still listening, you're probably enjoying our content. We really need your help with the algorithm. All it takes is a few seconds to like, subscribe, and comment. This allows us to keep creating new and free content. Alright, back to the show. Went to Marines boot camp in 2005. There was no room for BS back then, and I assume it's still the case. Well, about halfway through boot camp one night, we finished everything and were in our racks to sleep. The moment the DI flips the light switch off, one of the recruits yells across the squad bay, "Good night, sir!" So simple, so stupid, yet so absolutely hilarious. We spent the next 30 minutes getting IT'd in the dark. I still look back at the moment and laugh sometimes. I'm not a sergeant, but I have a funny story from my training. We were coming back from a PT session, and as soon as we turned left around the side of the building onto the parade chair, there's a Challenger 2 parked in the middle of the square. A big F-off British Army tank. As we are marching past it, our staff sergeant asked the platoon if any of us know what it is. The guy towards the back yells in the most confident possibly way, "Yes, staff sergeant! It's a Ford Fiesta!" Everybody burst out laughing, and staff is doing his absolute best to hold in this massive grin. The individual in question was later assigned a 3,000-word essay due the next day titled, "Why a Challenger Mark II is not a Ford Fiesta." My ex told me a story about how someone busted a loud, heinous fart in formation one day, and this big scary drill sergeant came right over to the offender, filled his lungs with a big, deep, noisy sniff and said, "That's what I like." X said that was the scariest, craziest dude he's ever met in his life. I went through OCS a couple years back. Our RDC was a stickler for making sure that our socks were pulled all the way up during PT, and would routinely yell at candidates to pull their socks up by yelling, "Motivate your socks!" A couple days into OCS and we're doing PT, and the RDC spots a girl with her socks bunched at her ankles. He rushes over and gets in her face, requests that she motivate her socks. Being that she was new, she has no idea what this means yet. He yells it again and she starts to panic. She looks at her socks and yells at the top of her lungs, "You can do it, socks!" RDC does an about face and despite his best attempt, absolutely loses it while trying to make a hasty exit. This reminds me of a story I had at OCS. Our RDC loved to yell and would often find any excuse to grab the other RDCs to join in with them berating a candidate. One morning during PT, we had a transitional exercise between exercise stations where we had to bear crawl, broad jump, crab walk, etc. between stations. So this RDC loved to make people uncomfortable by getting right in their face and screaming the transitional exercise. So he went up to my 6'2", 230-pound buddy got right in his face and screamed, "Crab walk candidate." He didn't look affected at all as the rest of us turned to start crab walking, hands behind you on all fours. Next thing we hear is this RDC losing his mind. "What the F are you doing, candidate?" Over and over again. His voice started to squeak from the strain. So the rest of us stop and turn to see what's happening, while the other RDCs are rushing over to join in on the fun and yell at my buddy. When I turn around, I see 3 RDCs with red faces berating, screaming, and holding back laughter right in the face of this guy. He is sidestepping down the field, crouched down, with his hands making pinching crab claws, while he's screaming, "I'm crab walking, Senior Chief!" The rest of us immediately started laughing while this guy had to crab walk like this for 30 yards down the field. Funniest memory at OCS by far. His hands never stopped making the pinching motions. In boot camp, you never touch a drill instructor's cover. Well, this one day we were in the squad bay, real chill, so the DIs took their covers off. One sat theirs on a footlocker while we were in a school circle around the senior. The senior got done and told us we were on free time, told all the DIs to go in the hut with her. Well, we turned to our footlockers and noticed the one left her cover. In a 3-recruit operation, we decided to return it to her. 2 recruits picked up the footlocker with the cover and walked over to the hut door. And the 3rd very nervously ran up to the door and knocked. The DI whipped open the door and screamed, "What, recruit?" "Ma'am, these recruits were just trying to return drill instructor staff sergeant Smuckatelli's cover." She looked down and realized what they'd done and snatched it so fast. She quickly covered her mouth and slammed the door. Laughter ensued in the whole bay. The door opened and all we heard was, "Shut up, fools!" which only made us laugh louder. Not a drill instructor, but this happened during the Beast Week of Air Force BMT. My flight was striking the soft mannequins with the stock of our M4, and as we did, our TI kept yelling, "Let me hear your war cry!" A fellow trainee had joked he was going to yell, "No means no." As it came my turn, I laid one into the mannequin, and I forgot to yell out in the process. The TI yelled at me to strike again and let me hear your war cry. In a panic, I yelled "no means no" as that was the first thing that came into my head. Totally shattered at his bearing and we all had a good laugh. In boot camp, a recruit needed to use the restroom and wasn't allowed to. The recruit pleaded that it was an emergency. The drill instructor says, "Well, I don't hear any sirens," and starting at the recruit. The recruit then proceeds to make siren noises. No one could hold in their laughter. Last week of Coast Guard boot camp, we all went to retrieve our civilian bags from storage. Told to grab all valuables and put them in a plastic bag, present them to company commander to be collected and locked in their office. Everyone comes out with the usual, wallets, phones, all that stuff. CC starts walking by and talking about how we'll get the bag of shinies back on Sunday for our off-base liberty. He stops mid-sentence as he gets to one recruit. Conversation goes like this. "Howard, why the heck do you have an iron?" Petty Officer James, Seaman Recruit Howard. My recruiter told me it was smart to bring an iron to share with my company." The CC doesn't say a thing, just turns on his heel, goes to his office, blasts Rob Zombie for 3 minutes, while we're still holding our plastic bags. We had learned over the weeks it was his method to prep us to get smoked. He comes back and tells Howard to put that dang iron away. Carries on with collecting the phones and wallets. We later learned he did that so we couldn't hear his laughter, and to take time to compose himself. It was the one time we broke him. I had a recruit I nicknamed Giggles, as she couldn't help but giggle anytime anything was happening, or even if we were just still. I came up with a rule that anytime I caught her, she had to tell me a joke. If it sucked, her whole squad had to push. Formation just before chow, we were sharking, and sure enough, Giggles starts her thing. Alright, Giggles, let's hear it. How do you get an elephant in the subway? No clue, Giggles. How do you do it? You take the S out of sub and the F out of way. I walked 2 laps, trying to figure it out, and finally turned to face her and said, Giggles, there's no F in way. And I stopped just as I got it. Alright, Giggles, you win this round. I was in AIC with a PFC Torres from Puerto Rico. He learned English by watching TV, but was predominantly a Spanish speaker before signing up. He stumbled over a response, and this exchange happened. Torres, are you stupid? I'm smart in Spanish, drill sergeant. I wasn't a drill instructor, just one of the maggots. On the first night, when they're screaming at you for hours, they told everybody to go shave. This one Asian dude came out of the latrine with no eyebrows. They screamed, What the heck did you do? You said this is shave your whole face, sir. Whenever I was in boot camp in the Marine Corps, my bunk was all the way at the end of the row of bunks. Even though the DIs were supposed to yell everything at us, there was one DI who would just speak in a normal voice. Because of this, and me being at the opposite end, I could never hear him. So I just look around to see what my fellow recruits were doing and follow suit. This particular time, the sun was setting, and it was in my eyes. So I put my hand in front of my face to block the sun. DI runs over to me and asks me what the heck I'm doing. I respond, Sir, this recruit can't hear you, sir. So this recruit was looking to his peers to see what to do. The DI walks me over to the window, tells me to stare into the sun. I try my best, but it's not really possible, and I put my hand in front of my face again. He slaps it down and tells me to stare in the sun. He says, Now tell the sun, Son, this recruit does not fear you. I start to laugh a little and say it. He tells me to scream it. I stood there screaming, Son, this recruit does not fear you, over and over and over and over and over till the sun was behind the hills that day. Alright, and we have the last post here. Favorite RDC to recruit insults. RDC walks in the compartment at some point in the morning. Recruit jumps to attention and says, Good afternoon, Chief. Chief looks up at him and down and states, Are you from the freaking future? I, another recruit at the time, snicker and proceed to get beaten for about an hour. As an overweight recruit is breathing hard while puffing his way around the track. There's only so much air in this gym. Stop stealing it from the rest of the recruits. Problematic recruit. Simply cannot get his uniform right for inspections, despite repeating help from all of us. Did you buy my action figure at Walmart, recruit? No, petty officer. Then why the F you playing with me? This is more of a threat than an insult, but while preparing uniforms for an inspection, old MM1 was actually in a good mood, sitting at the table in the middle of the compartment, eating a banana, while some of my fellow recruits were in line to ask him questions. My buddy steps up to ask him a question when it was his turn, but what he missed is that the recruit right before him asked the very same question. He didn't realize it because he was nervously preparing himself. Recruit, did you not hear? The guy just asked me the same thing. I'm actually gonna freaking kill you with this banana. Get the heck away from me. Your inches are way too small. You guys are lying to yourselves. Kenner, do you think you'd be smart if your parents were second cousins instead of first? Kenner, where did your parents meet? Ancestry.com? Kenner, I'm gonna call you Hambone. You fat F. Recruit passes out information. Shipmate on my left flinches and jumps back. RDC. What the F, recruit? What would your mother think if I told her instead of saving your fellow recruit, you wimped out and curled up like a fetus? Petty officer, my mother's dead. Well, now we know who let her down. RDC walks in and stops in front of the recruit on the tow line, whose rack is the one directly in front of the entrance. Recruit, every night before I go to bed, I pray to God that when I come into work the next morning, you will not be here. Yet here you are, every morning, standing on my toe line. I'm gonna pray again tonight, don't let me down this time. Told one of the shipmates that his blouse button was condition 1 and he should lay off the chow. First day of intake, we are all getting yelled at, and the one guy is staring at the chief. Chief runs over, gets in his face, and yells, "What the actual F are you staring at? F face. Do you want to F me?" The dude stammers out, No, chief." The chief answers back, No? Why the heck not? Are you saying I'm ugly?" Had a recruit get caught in the compartment in his PTU with his shirt untucked. Everyone had to get on the tow line while they made the recruit twirl around spaces, flaring his shirt out with his hand saying, "I wear my shirt like a skirt." Dude was mortified. For a similar violation, they made a recruit go to all the divisions in the building yelling, "I'm a pretty princess," with a curtsy. Happy to see that so many other RDCs have some type of retort to recruits saying they're coming. "Coming, chief?" "You better not be. I'm the only one allowed to do that in this compartment." Guy messed up like 5 times in a row in P days. The temp RDC says, "Jesus freaking Christ, Smith, it's Valentine's Day and you're gonna make me go home and beat my wife." I want you to go apologize to that tree for wasting the oxygen I worked so hard to produce. Still today makes me laugh to see the dude's face as he walks towards the tree. There was a recruit that had to carry around a little tree. I think it was fake, but not sure. To quote, make up for the oxygen the recruit was wasting. I laughed so hard. Chief RDC asked the recruit if he wanted an easy or hard question. The recruit says, "Easy question, Chief." Chief says, "What's your favorite color, recruit?" "Green, Chief." "Wrong, it's blue, drop." We had this East African kid who spoke with a super thick accent. He consistently wore his dog tags outside his shirt, so the first RDC made him stand on a box in the middle of the compartment, wearing all of our dog tags, like 100 or whatever. He quizzed him the whole evening on general Navy knowledge. The recruit had to answer every question with, "I pity the fool," at the beginning and end of each answer. Aggressively, the RDC would say stuff like, "God dang, Mr. T, that's exactly right." The most messed up one I heard. A black female recruit stepped in to sub for AROC and call cadence. Her ability to keep in time was, to say the least, questionable. Eventually, our RDC yelled at her, "Your rhythm is so bad, I'm starting to think you just have a really good tan." This is more of just a funny story, but one night we were all laying down in bed. Our RDC told us to tuck ourselves in and get ready for the butt beating we were to receive the next day. Out of nowhere, one of the recruits shouts, "Yes, Daddy," right when he flicked the lights off. He turned the light switch back on, walked a couple steps back into the compartment, shook his head in a disappointed parent fashion, and then proceeded to walk out. As soon as that door shut, we all laughed for a good 10 minutes. Not really what was said, but what was done. I was standing watch by myself in the compartment midday while the rest of the division was off at some evaluation. A rover RDC came in and started inspecting the racks. Found some messed up hospital corners or something. Comes to me and asks me to strip all the mattresses in the compartment, throw the sheets and the mattresses in the center. When I finish that, he looks at it and decides the, quote, pile wasn't big enough. He proceeds to tell me to empty the contents of all the racks into the center. At this point, it's an enormous pile of uniforms just sitting there. As we are just standing there, staring at it, as he admires our handiwork, I ask him what I should tell our RDCs when they return. 6 words is all he said before he turned his back and walked away. Tell them a tornado came through. So I did. They were so angry when they saw it, and I explained what happened. They didn't say a word, just astonished looks. You have a weird shaped head, Ken Ellis. It's freaking sharp in the back. Do you cut the nose of the man behind you when you do facing movements? No, petty officer. You are freaking lying! We DC-1 to a class full of 04s to 06s and command training as we were getting dressed out. Not fast enough for a stressful DC drill. It's a repair locker, not a foot locker. Get some boots and go! At the Naval Academy on the top deck of the dorm. First class midshipman to a platoon full of plebes. Go downstairs out to the courtyard and tell the company commander I said ping. We run down and in unison yell, Sir, ping, sir. Company commander says, go back up and tell him I said pong. We go back up and yell it. This continues on back and forth for about an hour or so. And I lied, this is actually the last post. Military people read it. Who was the how the heck did he pass basic training guy? Fireman Akis was making yakisoba noodles on deployment. He asked where to get the hot water, and someone pointed him at the coffee maker, which had one of those red spigots on the side. Instead of using the hot tap, Akis opened his noodles and dumped them into the coffee maker, where the grounds go, and replaced the coffee pot with his empty noodle bowl. People would typically stop him, but we were like 6 months into deployment, and he was our only source of entertainment. I have about a dozen other stories about him. He is literally the dumbest person I've ever met, and I spent a lot of time wondering how he was still alive. Edit. Alright, I'll plug in a few more that I remember. The end of the noodle story is boring. We just watched him make noodle water and then try to figure out why the individual noodles wouldn't go through the coffee maker hole and into his tray, which again was where the coffee pot goes. He thought they would do that automatically. Coffee tasted like noodles for the rest of the deployment. I had to physically restrain Akis from dumping an entire bottle of hand soap, a small pump bottle next to the sinks, into a washing machine because, and I quote, "It's all soap, bro, doesn't matter." This was after I told him he couldn't use my detergent, and after I later caught him trying to steal some of my detergent. Akis worked in front of the boiler and, as a result, was often dirty. After doing a random bunk inspection, our LPO found Akis' white pillowcase to be jet black on the other side. When asked if he is showering, Akis replied, in front of God and everyone else, "Yes, I'm M1. I wash my hands every night before I go to bed." You could hear a freaking pin drop because there were like 10 of us in the room who were all acting like he weren't listening. Turns out, he hadn't showered in weeks and thought washing his hands was enough to keep himself clean. After waking up, he would just flip his pillow over to the other side for inspections. He wasn't lazy. He literally thought washing your hands was synonymous with showering. We all learned a few simple magic tricks because Akis had the object permanence of a 3-week-old kitten. My favorite was when my friend unwrapped a candy bar and then arranged the empty candy wrapper like the bar was still inside. He showed the obviously empty candy bar wrapper to Akis and told him it was a brand new bar. Then my friend put the bar in his pocket and slapped it flat before taking out the empty, flattened wrapper and telling Akis he'd push the bar through his stomach wall to eat it. Let's just say it wasn't hard to blow this kid's mind. Another magic trick was a bit more coordinated. We had a camera pointed at a certain place in the engine room for monitoring. The camera fed to a screen in the office where we'd spent a lot of the time. One guy told Akis to beg a card before shuffling the deck. In the process, he very obviously handed the jack to another guy, walked down and put it in front of the camera. The first guy, the magician, did the whole is this your card thing before fake getting frustrated and throwing the deck at the monitor. Then a third guy acted bewildered and pointed to the screen where the card was sitting on the engine we were monitoring. Akis lost his crap. He literally had a meltdown and started yelling gibberish and refused to talk to the magician for weeks after. Those are the hits, but I might have one or two more. Let me think about it. There was a guy in an outfit I served with, never mind where, called Donkey Brains. On winter in dock, they told him about the snow snakes, white snakes in the snow that wait until you pee, then bite your penis. The guy went a weekend without peeing. We had a guy we called Domestic Pepsi. His surname was Internicola. He was dumber than a bag of hammers. One day we had a big inspection. Company commander inspecting. The commander eventually made his way to Domestic Pepsi and started asking questions about general Marine Corps knowledge. This recruit does not know, sir. This recruit does not know, sir. Sir, this recruit doesn't know. Finally, our commander asked him, Son, you don't even know if you're alive, do you? There was the longest pause following the question. Then a small, quiet, and incredibly confused voice says, Sir, this recruit does know that he's alive, sir. It's like he actually had to think about it. In a small and intimidated head, he was probably going through 6 of the 7 facts he knew and seriously asked himself, Am I alive? We had one guy in my basic training platoon that was a walking safety hazard. Among other things, he managed to fall out of a first floor window, got the squad's pack stolen during an exercise because he fell asleep watching them, fired his rifle on full audio into the freaking camp because he, quote, thought he saw a wild pig rifling through our stuff. And to cap it all off, he put a live round between the drill instructor's feet at the firing range. He passed basic with the rest of us. The only guy that failed because he deserted halfway through. Although he did get a mark in his file that he was unsuited for any rank with any kind of responsibility. I had a kid at my first squadron, Air Force, who was quite possibly one of the dumbest, least self-aware people I've ever met. This kid either couldn't or wouldn't retain basic information, which was problematic given that he was in the intel career field. At one point, he was presenting a briefing about North Korea and claimed with a straight face that the capital city of North Korea was Bogota. For those keeping score, that's the capital of Colombia. He tried very hard to project a redneck persona, and as part of this bought a massive bright red lifted truck with obnoxious redneck decal work. Anyone with half a brain could tell you he was struggling to pay for it on his measly E3 barracks rat pay. Eventually he decided he didn't want to pay the truck anymore, so he drove it into the lake one night and filed an insurance claim, then used the money to immediately buy a different vehicle. This was quickly uncovered by the police, and he was kicked out of the Air Force. To this day, I have no earthly idea who thought this kid belonged to the military intelligence or how he got through intel school. I've had the pleasure of serving with a few of those types. The 2 most memorable are, went through basic with this kid. This dude had literally never a day in his life prior done anything physical. Ever. He had a permanent hunchback from sitting on the couch all his life. He was literally purple because his circulation sucked. His arms had the bat wings of an 80-year-old woman, and honest to God, had a waddle, which led to his unfortunate nickname of Turkey. He legitimately couldn't do 5 push-ups. A single sit-up, this dude couldn't even jump high enough to grab onto the pull bar, let alone do one. Failed every single PT test we took. The drills actually called his mother, and the army paid for her to fly out, so she can give him encouragement, so maybe he'd pass. Home Slice was still graduated with us, because the drills couldn't be asked to chapter him and wanted his gaming unit to take the flak instead. Second dude was a real special case. 100% a Gomer Pyle type situation. Only a few peanuts rattling around the can. He got to us right around the same time as What Does the Fox Say was a big deal. He considered it his favorite song and sang it nearly constantly. He honest to God thought he was a cat and would lick himself and randomly meow at us. Dude was white as crap, but every other week he'd be repping a different gang. Typically one that doesn't recruit white folk. His favorite was Latin Kings. I think he just liked yellow. We'd catch him staring at walls and stuff, completely zoned out. We got orders to deploy and nobody wanted him with us, but sadly he came along. Leadership took his firing pin, and he guarded the DFAC for the whole deployment. As soon as we got back, he was chaptered for mental instability. A few of my guys are still Facebook friends with him, and according to him, he was John Rambo himself overseas. Oh my god, all of them. I was part of the cadre for AIT, and I had to file a lot of paperwork for my dumb butts. Here's a highlight reel. One of my guys ran into a pole and broke his face. Twice. On the same pole. The ink hadn't even dried in the first report before he hit it a second time. Somehow a rumor started that if you can do PT belt on a deer, you'd be exempt from PT. There was an entire week where we had to keep soldiers from sneaking out the barracks with an excessive number of PT belts. Except we hadn't figured out why yet. Then by some sick twist of fate, a deer actually ran through our morning formation. Like through it. There was just a hailstorm of PT belts at the poor thing. I had one get all the way through the training just to discover the week before he graduated that he was at the wrong IT. He's supposed to discover learning a completely different specialty. I didn't even know how that could happen. Health and welfare inspections are always a nightmare. None of these chuckleheads do laundry half as often as they should, and half do not do it at all. Then there's the really gross finds, like bags of used sanitary products that they can't find the motivation to walk 100 yards to the dumpster for. A hurricane came through in a month, and there was a conspiracy to jump off the barracks with makeshift parachutes. We successfully prevented that incident and would have got away without filing paperwork if one of them hadn't bragged about it while raking leaves at BN. One, I kid you not, could not spell his own name. A lot come through not knowing cursive, and I figured that was the reason he was having trouble. So I told him instead of signature, he could just print it on the dotted line. Mother lover misspelled his own name. Then there was the butt plug incident. Honestly, the less said the better. This isn't including the petty high school BS these brats get up to. He said, she said, starting a fight to defend my honor, the straight up crimes that happened, and general tomfoolery. You'd think this would be a reason to fear for our military's capabilities, right? Nope. I would not unleash those terrors on anyone except our worst enemies. Lord have mercy on them, because these poop lords can't even spell the word. Oh, there have been so many of these. Let's see. First was Sergeant Stubby. On aircraft, we have these things called vernacular fans. Think of a high amperage DC powered fan with blades that are 2 millimeters thick. These things usually have a tubular house for air channeling reasons, and spin so fast they are near invisible. For whatever reason, he decided to check if it was spinning and stuck his hand down the backside of one of these things and stuck a finger in. The end result was a clean severance of the first knuckle. I watched this guy fall asleep on the wing of an Apache while trying to install a clamp on the drain line and roll forward off the wing. He hit the Hellfire rack on the way down, which broke his fall and his arm. The next guy was a career SPC. If I remember correctly, he was 8 years in when I met him. He was probably somewhere on the spectrum, but that was before autism was really in the mainstream. So people thought he was high in chromosomes. He was horrible at coping with stressors and would high side on the regular. He came in one day and had a gray undershirt on back when they were supposed to be. I asked him if he was wearing a PT shirt underneath his top. He excitedly declared, of course not. At that point, I told him to look down. He did, and in the span of about 2 seconds, grabs both sides of the collar, zips his hands and collars tight across his neck, and then without a word runs full speed for the door, clips the door frame, and eats it outside, and then disappears for about half an hour, shows back up with a brown shirt, no recollection of anything ever happening. About 3 weeks later, he shows up to work, and during morning uniform inspection, I get to him and notice he's wearing 2 left boots. He didn't even notice he had 2 left boots. Fast forward a couple more weeks, and I'm walking with him out to the helicopter, and he's carrying a torque wrench. Evidently, his hand stops working like normal hand. Torque wrench slips right out his fingers, hits his boot, and gets punted down the flight line 40 feet. These are calibrated tools, so if they drop more than a foot, you're supposed to get them recoded. He just walks his happy butt up to it, looks at me and stares at me while he picks the wrench up and then starts soldering back out towards the aircraft. I call him on it and he's dead serious, bewildered that he would be told to go get a new torque wrench. For every quality dude, there's someone equally horrible, and no one seems quite sure how she got there. And that's it for this video. If you listened this far, odds are you enjoyed it. Please subscribe. What's your fun military story? Share it in the comments, whether that's first hand, second hand, third hand, friend or family stories too. They're all good. Yeah, go ahead and put this in the comments. And thank you.